Hi, welcome to the last video on our special senses, and this is involving the sense of hearing. First, though, before we get into the structure, let's look at basically what hearing is. And the organ that's involved with this is your ear. Not only does your ear help you hear, but your sense of balance is also controlled by structures within your ear. So hearing and balance are both talked about together. The word for balance, if you see equilibrium, is balance. We kind of talked about that with homeostasis. So basically, our ear is designed to receive sound waves, and this is a mechanical receptor. So it's a mechanoreceptor, similar to what touch and stuff is that we talked about earlier. But these are sound waves. And so the very outer part of our ear is designed to capture those sound waves and funnel them into the middle and inner part of our ear, where we can interpret that sensation as sound. And so these vibrations are what's causing the movement of the membranes and the bones. You have bones inside your ear. They're actually the smallest bones in the body that will transmit those sound waves and amplify them to get to the structure that is involved in actually perceiving the sense of hearing. So we'll look at these structures in just a second. But again, if we look at details of hearing and balance, it involves little bitty neurons that have tiny little microscopic hairs in them that can move in fluid. So let's look at this diagram first, looking at the structures of the ear. And so this part right here is called the outer ear, or the pinna. You'll see that. This is the ear canal. And then you have the eustachian tube. The eustachian tube, whoa, did not mean to do that. The eustachian tube is what connects your ear to the middle of your throat, and that helps equalize the pressure. If you travel to areas with higher atmospheric pressure or lower atmospheric pressure quickly, then like in a plane, your ear needs to balance out that difference in pressure, and so your ears will pop. And that sensation is from the balancing out of the air pressure between your ear and your throat. So that's what that sound is and what that is coming from. And it happens through the eustachian tube. This tube is very short in children, and so lots of times children get ear infections because if they have bacteria in their throat, then it's very easy and quick for the bacteria to travel through the eustachian tube into the middle ear and cause that ear infection. The first structure that sound waves hit after they go through this ear canal is this thing called the tympanic membrane. If you are playing in the band and you're familiar with the timpani, that's that big bass drum, and this is your eardrum. That's why it's called the tympanic membrane. It's very thin, and so when those sound waves hit it, it causes it to vibrate. And the other side of that is attached. You see the series of these three bones. The common name is the hammer, anvil, and the stirrup. This pretty much looks like a stirrup if you can see it, and I'll show you them in just a second. But this first bone here that's attached to the eardrum is called the malleus, or the hammer. So the pushing of the membrane, the eardrum, from the sound waves causes the hammer to start vibrating. The hammer is attached to the second one called the anvil, or incus, and that one continues to vibrate and it's starting to amplify. And then when it hits the third bone, the stapes or the stirrup, then that is going to continue to be amplified sound. Now the stirrup here is attached to another structure. This whole thing is one piece. And so when it starts pushing from the sound waves, it's going to push into this structure that has fluid and cause the fluid to start moving from the vibration. It's kind of like when you hit the surface of the water and you've transferred your mechanical energy onto the water and you see ripples. Or if you just push the water with your hand, it's the same kind of thing that's happening here. The pushing of the stirrup is making the liquid in here start to move. This structure right here looks like a snail shell. It's called the cochlea. And the fluid that's in there that's moving will stimulate little bitty hair cells in there near in this what's called the organ of Corti. That's the hearing organ, and that will turn the sound waves, mechanical sound waves, into electrical nerve impulses that will travel to your brain. I'm going to move myself over here now. Then this other stuff here, these are 3 different spirals that you have in your ear, and those are connected with, this is where the balance is noticed. And the way these spirals are oriented, I'll show you in just a second on the model, is that they're oriented in the different planes that we can move our head. So there's one canal that's shaped so that we, as we're going this direction, can tell. It sends a signal to our brain that says this is where your head is in relation to the ground, and you can monitor your balance, make sure you make movements with your skeletal muscles to make sure you don't fall over. Then you have another one that will do these kinds of movements. When you do this with your head, then that is stimulated by the fluid in a different one of those canals. And then you have another one that's rotational this way. Same kind of thing. All the different ways that you can move your head moves the liquid that sends a message to your brain that says, do your muscles this way so you don't fall over. Now, sometimes it doesn't work. As you get older, your balance doesn't, these neurons and cells don't work as well, so you lose your balance more as you get older. And some people are just clumsy, so they're just born that way, have worse or better balance than one another. It's very individualized. Time to go. But at the base of all of these things, and at the base of the cochlea, the semicircular canals, I never did say what they were, and the base of the cochlea, you have these 2 nerves that come together to form the auditory nerve that will send the information it's receiving from the sense to the brain that will tell you what you're hearing, how loud it is, what kind of music it is based on what you've learned, and then your balance. This is called the auditory nerve, or the vestibulocochlear nerve is another name for that. And that will go to the brain. And again, we have our brain model. And this is the nerve here that's coming from the ear. The ear would be right about here. It would send the nerve here and take the information back to the temporal lobe of the brain. Let me pick up, that noise you heard was the ear model that dropped. So let me show you those structures just a second. Okay, I'm back. Here is the model of the ear. Okay, it's kind of big. So this is this outer ear, or the pinna. And then this tube going in would be the ear canal. That's what you can stick your finger in. And this ear canal is lined with tiny little hairs and also wax glands to produce earwax. And the purpose of that is not to gross you out, but to help collect dirt. The things that go in your ear can stick to that wax and trap it so it doesn't go all the way in your ear. And then eventually it will fall out. And that's kind of how you clean your ears out. So be careful about sticking stuff in your ear. Okay, because I'm hitting something that you could damage if you poke too much into that. So as far as cleaning your ear, just gently go around the edges there, or just let it fall out naturally if it's not too bad. Okay, so let's open up the ear here. And now you can see the inside of that. I'm just having problems today. Okay, so this was attached. This back in position. Okay, so this right here is the eardrum. That's that thin membrane that will start vibrating whenever these sounds hit it. On the back side of that, they have 2 of those ear bones, the hammer or the malleus, and the incus, which is the anvil. See how they're close together, they're touching each other. So as sound waves move, they touch each other and send it on. And then let me take this part up. Okay. And then you will see the third bone right here. It's attached to right there. It's the stirrup. So there you can kind of see the stirrup shape of it, like on a horse. Set this down. And the other part that you see here is the cochlea right here. It looks like the snail shell. and then those semicircular canals up here. So remember how I was saying how it had different angles, directions. So no matter how you move your head, okay, it's going to be, you're going to have receptors that can sense that specific direction. So you have this way, you have this way, and you have this way. So these three different directions. And these nerves all combine here to form, this is the auditory nerve here. Normally it would have something a little bit more from this direction, from the balance, but this is the auditory nerve that'll go to the brain. Okay, this next diagram you have is basically how does hearing work? So the first thing, you have sound waves that enter your outer ear and travel down the ear canal. Next, the tympanic membrane will start vibrating and send the vibrations to the tiny bones in the middle ear. These ossicles is what they're called. The hammer anvil in the stirrup, or the malleus incus in the stapes. These will amplify the vibrations. They make it louder and stronger and send them to the inner ear, which is this part, this thing that I was holding up a minute ago. That's the inner ear. Within the cochlea, that snail shell right here, the organ of Corti is filled with these little hairs called stereocilia that will transmit the mechanical energy of the sound waves into electrical signals. And then those pass through the auditory nerve towards the brain and end up in the temporal lobe, which will, your brain will then interpret that as different sound. So that's how hearing works. And this will end the video on hearing.